the Football for Kids podcast with me, Darren Rees. In this episode, we are going to be talking about the world's greatest club. The club with fans who travel overland and oversea to see their team. And the current League One champions, I'll have you know. Of course, we're going to be talking about Portsmouth Football Club. I'm sure you know by now that I am a Pompey fan, and that'll be why the intro to this episode was a little bit more biased than the other intros. But I thought as Pompey have been promoted to the Championship for the first time in many, many years, now was a very good time to do an episode on my club, Portsmouth FC. You're going to learn about the history of Portsmouth, some of the great players that have visited Fratton Park like Kaká and Ronaldinho, and much, much more. But before we get into this episode, a big thanks goes to everyone who's been heading to www.footballforkidspodcast.com and sending in their shout-outs and messages via the contact page on the website. Here are a couple of those messages to get us going. The first one says, "Hi Darren, my name is Robbie and I'm 8 years old and I'm from Scotland. I have a sister called Abby. I listen to your podcast all the time. I'd like to give my friends from," I'm going to butcher the name of this, but I'm going to give it a good go. I think it's something like Glennaquart. I've really got that wrong, but you'll know what it means. Football team, a shout out. Can you please do an episode on Onana and Martinez? Did you know my local team, we call it Calais Thistle, have the longest name of any professional football team in the world? Inverness Caledonian Thistle Football Club. And Robbie finishes his message with an almighty Well, thank you very much for being a listener, Robbie, and thank you for letting me really butcher the name of your football team. But I'm sure the people who are in it know exactly what I meant. Well, I hope they do anyway. The next one is from Herbert Patmore, which says, "Hi Darren, love your podcast so much. Keep up the good work. I would love a shout out. I play recreation football. I listen from," here we go, here comes another butchered pronunciation, "Leuven in Belgium. And I support my local team, OH Leuven, and the Magpies. I do support England though. I would like an episode on football badges, please. That is a great idea. I'm going to have to do that one very soon, and that has been added to my list of episodes that I need to write. And this is especially for you. Now, Herbert Patmore finishes his message with one of the biggest that we've had in a very long time. Well, thank you very much to both of you for your shout-outs. I really appreciate you taking the time to head to the website, sending a message, and also for listening to Football for Kids. If you want the chance of getting a shout-out, then ask an adult to head to www.footballforkidspodcast.com and get them to submit a message via the contact form. But just to let you know, I can't read out every message which I get just because of how many come in. But what I can promise you is I do read every single message that comes into the inbox. Right then, let's get going with this episode on Portsmouth Football Club. Portsmouth Football Club was founded on the 5th of April all the way back in 1898, which, as I record this, was 126 years ago. It's thought that football became popular in Portsmouth, as Portsmouth is a naval city, which means there are lots of boats in the city, as it's on the south coast of England, right next to the sea. There are hundreds and hundreds of different boats and ships in Portsmouth. Some of them belong to the Royal Navy. Some of them are owned by business people delivering goods in and out of Portsmouth. And some of them are boats owned by those who do sailing as a hobby. Because Portsmouth is so busy with boats, and has been for hundreds and hundreds of years, people have been visiting Portsmouth for work, in the military, and many other things. It's thought and known that soldiers from other parts of the country who visited Portsmouth were a big influence on bringing football to the city, especially the soldiers and sailors from the northern parts of the UK, as football was already becoming pretty established by the late 1800s. Portsmouth FC are known as Pompey, and so is the city of Portsmouth to so many people. Portsmouth is also known as the home of the Royal Navy, and the term Pompey has been around for a very, very long time, and is thought to have come from hundreds of years ago, and those who worked in the Navy. Even a very famous writer and poet and playwright called William Shakespeare mentions Pompey is strong at sea, and that is going back over 400 years ago. So when you hear Pompey, it's a nickname that has been used for the city and the football club for a very, very long time. Before Pompey joined the English Football League in 1920, they spent some time in the Southern and the Western Leagues. But in Pompey's first season in the English Football League, they played 42 games. They won 12, they drew 15, and they lost 15, and they finished 12th. Their top goal scorer for that season was a man called Frank Stringfellow, the first ever man to be a top goal scorer for a club like Pompey in their first proper season in the English Football League. That is a good one to know. Then, a few years later, in the 1993-94 season, Pompey won the league to be promoted to the English Football Second Division. And after just 3 seasons in the Second Division, Pompey had a quality season, finishing second and gaining automatic promotion to the top division of English football. What made this even more special is that they were the first team south of London to have ever done this. Pompey remained in the English top division for many years, and then in 1939 they made football history, as they made it to the FA Cup final against Wolverhampton Wanderers, and they won in devastating fashion, beating Wolves 4-1 to lift the famous trophy at Wembley Stadium in front of 99,000 fans. And what made this really special was the fact that they had previously made 2 FA Cup finals, being narrowly beaten by Manchester City and Bolton. It wasn't too long after this that football stopped, as World War II had started, and Portsmouth, being a naval city and the home of the Royal Navy, meant that there really couldn't be any football at all, because the war was on top of Portsmouth. In 1946, the football season started again, and Pompey continued in Division 1. And a couple of years later, they were the top division champions 2 seasons in a row. Portsmouth were one of the top teams in the country for a number of years, until the 1958 season, when they lost 28 games. They finished last and fell down to League 2. They then struggled in League 2, and in 2 seasons they were relegated to Division 3. Pompey had gone from the bottom of the football leagues to the top of the division, won the FA Cup, then fallen from a great height. This has been a bit of a theme for the club over the years, and it's something which we'll discover more as we go through the years of Portsmouth Football Club. Now, before we go any further on the relegations and promotion stuff, I need to tell you about Portsmouth's ground, Fratton Park. Now, if you've been to Fratton Park, you'll be familiar with this very famous chant. When you hear that chant at Fratton Park, my goodness, is it special. If you've been to Fratton Park, you will know what a very special place it is. The ground was opened to the public over 125 years ago, and, so the records show, the first game held at Fratton Park was a friendly match between Portsmouth and Southampton. Portsmouth won that game 2-0, and the term friendly these days, and for a very long time, doesn't really match up when you say Portsmouth versus Southampton. Pompey's biggest rivals are Southampton, and Southampton's biggest rivals are most definitely Pompey. But Pompey and Southampton haven't hated each other forever. Southampton were initially a church football team, which was something which was very common 100 years ago. In fact, when Portsmouth won the FA Cup for the first time back in 1939, the cup was on display in the Southampton Guildhall, and the majority of the Southampton fans and Southampton locals weren't bothered by it at all. In fact, they quite liked the fact that it was in there. However, in the 1960s, both Portsmouth and Southampton spent many seasons in Division 2 of the English Football League, and they played each other many times. This was a period when the rivalry really started to intensify. But as time went on, the two started to dislike each other even more. And in 1976, Southampton scored a goal in the dying moments of a game at Fratton Park, which meant that Pompey would be relegated to Division 3. A bitter pill to swallow for the Pompey players and the Pompey fans. Portsmouth had to wait around 8 years before getting a chance of getting their own back. Saints visited Fratton Park, and again they scored a last-minute goal to knock Portsmouth out of the FA Cup. This caused a rivalry between Portsmouth and their neighbours Southampton to intensify even further. Pompey and their fans got their own back though. It was in 2005 when Portsmouth thumped Southampton 4-1 at Southampton, sending the Pompey fans completely and utterly bonkers. There are many different reasons and stories about why Portsmouth and Southampton are rival clubs, and not everyone agrees on them. But one thing both Southampton and Pompey fans will agree on is there is nobody they want to beat more than each other, and the South Coast rivalry is still going strong. Over the years, Portsmouth have had some fantastic players, and there certainly isn't enough time to mention all of them. But one we do need to mention is a player called Jimmy Dickinson, who was a one-club player and played for Portsmouth from the 1946 season when football restarted after World War II, all the way to the 1964 season. And in 19 seasons playing for the club, he played in the 3rd, 2nd and 1st Division of the English Football League. Jimmy made more than 800 appearances for Pompey across all the different competitions, and he even went on to manage the club for a short period too. A proper Pompey legend. Another Portsmouth legend was Peter Harris, a one-club player who played on the right wing for Pompey and is the club's highest goal scorer in 126 years of existence. And I couldn't possibly move on without mentioning Guy Whittingham. Guy Whittingham played for Portsmouth on more than one occasion and still holds the record for the most goals in one season for the club, when he banged in 42 goals in one season. That is quite simply incredible. Now, we know that Pompey have had some great players, some great managers, and most definitely some great support over the years. But a time that the Pompey fans of today won't forget in a hurry was most definitely the early 2000s. You might have heard of a very famous footballer and football manager called Harry Redknapp. Harry played for Brentford, West Ham and Bournemouth, just to name a few. But he's also managed his fair share of teams. He managed QPR, West Ham, Bournemouth and, of course, Portsmouth. In Harry's first season with the club in 2002, they were in Division 1, or as we know it now, the Championship. Harry won the league with Pompey, sending them to the Premier League. But after just a couple of seasons, Harry made a move that not many people would. He told the footballing world that he would be taking a break, and 2 weeks later, he was pictured outside St Mary's holding a Southampton scarf. Harry was off to manage Portsmouth's biggest rivals, Southampton. However, after one pretty unsuccessful season, he came back to Pompey, and when he came back, he made a statement. Under the guidance of Harry Redknapp for a second time, Pompey made it to the FA Cup final. In 2008, they played Cardiff in the final, beating them 1-0 in front of 90,000 people. Portsmouth won their first FA Cup trophy in 69 years. Harry had made it up to the Pompey fans, who were still very baffled and annoyed with him switching to the Saints. 2008 was actually a good year for Portsmouth, as they played in Europe, And they welcomed AC Milan to the historic Fratton Park, where players like Ronaldinho and Kaká were blown away by the full voices of Portsmouth fans. Fratton Park was rocking, and the game ended Portsmouth 2, AC Milan 2. And of course, Ronaldinho scored in that game. Pompey made it to the FA Cup final yet again when they met Chelsea, but a Didier Drogba goal ended the game with Chelsea winning 1-0 and denying Portsmouth of their third FA Cup trophy. Following on from legendary players and teams playing at Fratton, winning the FA Cup, being runners-up, Harry joining, Harry leaving, Harry joining again, Harry leaving again, Portsmouth had a whole host of different managers, and they went through a bad period, being relegated to the Championship, and then being relegated to Division 1, and then being relegated to Division 2. In fact, they were not that far off the relegation zone in Division 2 at one point, and there was a time that Portsmouth Football Club were in so much trouble with money that the club could have shut down forever. However, the Pompey Supporters Trust was formed, where Portsmouth supporters raised the money and saved the club from falling apart and disappearing. Since being relegated, Pompey have done what they always have, and that is to fight. They have put the performances in, and after 4 seasons in Division 2, they won the league and got themselves into Division 1. And after 6 seasons in Division 1, Pompey won the league again under manager John Mousinho, and they did it in the most dramatic of fashions. On Tuesday, the 16th of April, they hosted Barnsley at home. And with 17 minutes to go, Pompey were 2-1 down. However, Colby Bishop hit the back of the net from the penalty spot, and then, with 1 minute to go and it being 2-2 and 3 points meaning Pompey would be champions and be promoted, Portsmouth Shaughnessy scored a header and Fratton Park went wild. The referee blew his whistle, and the 3 points that Portsmouth had won were enough for both promotion back to the Championship and for them to be the League One champions. Thousands upon thousands of Portsmouth fans invaded the pitch, lifting players up on their shoulders, and the party in the city didn't stop all night. The story of Portsmouth Football Club is a roller coaster one, and being a Portsmouth fan sure makes you feel like you're in the front carriage of the Pompey coaster. Their lows are low, but the highs are about as high as it gets. It doesn't matter if Portsmouth are in Division 2, 1, the Championship, or in the Premier League. Fratton Park will always be rocking, and as long as the city has got the football club, the Pompey roller coaster will continue. Now, before we wrap this episode up, it's been quite a season for the city, as not only did the men's team win the league and gain promotion, but the Pompey women's team also won, making it a double league winning season. And not forgetting the Portsmouth amputee team, who have had some amazing results this season as well. What a time to be a Pompey fan. I hope that you've enjoyed listening and learning about all things Portsmouth Football Club. And remember, if you know someone who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about Football for Kids. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly or pitch side, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time.